Hello, welcome back to the James Rambling Reviews for yet another episode. And in today's episode, I'm actually going to be reviewing a movie that you probably didn't expect me to review. And this movie is called Pool Man. But before I get into that, I'll give you a bit of context and I'll give you a bit about the plot, what I would give this movie out of 10, and stuff like that. So, Pool Man, when it comes to Pool Man, right, this movie's directed by Chris Pine. And personally speaking, Chris Pine isn't somebody that I've seen every single movie he stars in, and the only kind of movie I've seen him in is Dungeons and Dragons from last year. And there has been Star Trek movies that I've seen on TV where he stars in it, but I've never really seen tons and tons of movies where Chris Pine is actually in the movie, if you know what I mean. And so for me personally, this was certainly an interesting one going in, as I never seen a trailer before this movie even started. I never really read up on the film itself, and I don't really watch many movies with Chris Pine in it. And so to find out that he directed this movie, he co-wrote this movie, and that it was on Amazon Prime, it's quite interesting for me to get into. So the plot of this movie, right, Chris Pine pretty much directs this movie where it's trying to be this comedy kind of like LA noir spy drama comedy movie kind of thing. So he's this pool man, right, and he's at this apartment complex, and then he's got this girlfriend who lives in this trailer with him. There's also Danny DeVito, and then there's all these kind of other famous actors. And then he goes into town with Danny DeVito and all this kind of stuff. And he goes and campaigns about public transport to this guy. He also writes letters to this guy called Erin Brockovich, I think his name is. And he does all these kind of things in this movie. And he's trying to kind of do all these things and get around life and all that, while also meditating, making origami, and doing all of this kind of stuff. And so you get to see this director Chris Pine kind of experiment with all these other ideas for about 1 hour and 40 minutes long. And so how do I actually feel about this movie? So when it comes to this movie, right, I've seen weird movies in the past where it's an interesting concept and it really, really, really gets interesting as the movie goes on. It's quite clever, or the director has this interesting perspective on the topic they are trying to portray and stuff like that. But with this movie, right, I'm gonna say this right now that when it comes to the James Rambling reviews, I never really like bash a movie or talk negatively. Like I do have criticisms about movies I enjoy, but never really hate on something in a while. And so when it comes to this movie, I didn't really enjoy this movie, right? Because in the beginning of the film, I did actually find the movie kind of interesting. I thought there was kind of an interesting concept to begin with, but as the movie went along, I found myself being very confused as he's doing all these things in the movie. Nothing really has like like a direct conclusion or anything like that. So it would be weird to me if this movie got a sequel, as there's just a lot of things that kind of go on. Nothing really makes any sense, and there is a certain point where I do actually find myself laughing at the film, not because the comedic aspects are actually funny, no, because it's more so this movie where it's just so confusing, so silly, so strange that I just laughed because it was just bad, if you know what I mean. And I mean, as a director that's doing this for the first time, you can tell that he's just trying to throw all this stuff in here to see what lands, see what sticks. I would equate this to somebody who's like trying to draw a painting, but there's like scribbles and it's a mess and there's all this stuff that's going on and there's a lot of meandering in the plot and nothing gets resolved and it goes on for an hour and 40 minutes and I'm sitting there like checking how long is left. And usually, when a film is like that, you're wondering when it's going to end. You know, you're not having a good time here. And so, that is kind of how I felt about this movie. I'd give the movie like a 4 out of 10. There have been worse movies I have seen, though. It was kind of watchable, so I would give it a 4 out of 10. But as I've kind of sat with the film, I don't think it's as bad as some of the other movies I've seen in the past few years. Like, yeah, it's horrible, but it's not something that's the worst thing of all time because it's not something that it's like so bad that I'm just like, oh wow, why did you make this? And yeah, there's that. So that's kind of how I feel about this movie. Like, it's really, really bad, but it's not something that I would say is the worst thing to exist in the universe because a lot of movies, there's a lot of bad movies and there's a lot of good movies, and that's what's to take away from this is that not every movie has to be good. And this movie certainly proves that point of actually not being the greatest thing on planet Earth, and so it just never worked for me. And so it would be interesting to see if anyone actually liked this movie because I did look up online that it only made $100,000 at the box office. Critics didn't really enjoy this movie. I've seen a couple of reviews, nobody really enjoys this movie, and there's not really anyone saying anything good about this. And I'm kind of adding to that where I never really got into it. And so that is my review, right? I tried to record this a few times as it was a frustrating move for me because I just didn't know what to talk about with the film. But I managed to find a way where I actually made a review that was cohesive enough, made sense enough that yeah, you can kind of understand where I was coming from, and so there's definitely that. I hope you enjoyed this review. This was kind of a different review for me because I don't really make fun or just bash films in general. So yeah, bye. See you next time for another review on the James Ramblin' Reviews and all that kind of stuff. Pool Man, Chris Pine, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, bye.